Hello everyone. Thank you so much for your participation in the Ontario Provincial Music Festival. You have all been recommended for your excellence by your local community festivals that are sponsored by service clubs like Rotary, Kinsman, Kiwanis, Lions, Optimist, or maybe sponsored by other specific groups in your community. And I want to just take a moment to thank those service clubs for their continued commitment to fostering and showcasing the talents in their communities. In some cases in Ontario, those festivals have been going on for nearly 100 years. Very fortunate to have that infrastructure of building musical talent. And I also wanted to thank the volunteers who assist with those festivals, because they give so generously of their time and their energy to make the whole thing happen. And of course, there are donors who give scholarship money and awards that again help those who would like to go on to the next levels to do so. I just wanted to say that sometimes people begin their musical careers in festivals like this and go on to have a professional life in music. So you never know. It's always wonderful to participate and encourage others to do so too. The classes I'm going to speak about are the duet classes in the intermediate ages, 15 and 16, senior ages 17, 18, advanced 19 to 29, and adults ages 29 and above, and the adult and child class. There was one entry in all the classes except the intermediate, where there were 3, and I was delighted and somewhat humbled by the level of talent that was presented in these classes and duets. And thank you again for your musicianship and your creativity in your performances of them. I'd like to begin by talking about the general expectations of singing a duet. Duets can be 2 voices singing consistently in harmony, or 2 voices singing individually and then coming together occasionally in harmony. So it's important, first of all, to honor what is in the music or the score. The notes and the rhythms should be exact, and then you can make decisions about dynamic markings or tempo changes, bearing in mind that the composer has put a great deal of thought and energy into what he expects from this duet. Of course, that assumes that the edition you're using is a respectable one, and you can, I would say, try to do what is on the page, and if it really doesn't suit, mark it out that you're not going to do it, so the adjudicator knows you've made that choice. It's also very important to have the onsets and offsets, the beginnings and endings of the phrases and of the consonants on certain words come absolutely together, and that your breaths are taken in the same places, unless it's marked differently in the music. So again, I'm happy to say that you were all very conscientious about these preliminary expectations. So while there are some unison moments in the repertoire in the intermediate level, the duets were for the most part 2 voices singing consistently in that class, and almost consistently in harmony. Which brings me to the next important factor about duet singing, and that is, of course, the blending of the voices. So sometimes younger voices blend more easily as their unique tone and individuality hasn't yet developed. Or sometimes siblings have an advantage in that their voices are very similar. It is more difficult when there is a difference in age, when one of the participants has already a mature vibrato and the other one doesn't, but you can still work towards a nice blending of the voices. And sometimes, of course, if the characters in the duet are different. Of course, the voices are not expected to sound exactly the same. So there are some things to practice when you are working on blending the voices, and the first thing is the unity of the vowels, matching the vowel sounds, especially on long notes or when the voices come together in unison. Sometimes you will hear that if a pitch, a unison pitch or an interval is absolutely in tune, there are harmonics or overtones that happen, and you can feel that and hear it. It's quite exciting when the voices are really blending well together, and there's this extra feeling of not exactly an echo, but a harmonics that happen. So aim for that if you can as you develop your duet singing. It's a bit of a vibration. You can try singing a long, sustained unison note that's comfortable for both of you in your ranges, and see if the sound is unified. You can sing it on different vowels and experiment with that. You can even look at your partner and see how they are shaping the vowel with their mouth, and see if modifying yours or making it similar helps the sound to be unified. In experimenting with the same vowel on two different notes, also keeping the same shape, and then of course finding a place in your particular music where a word is you're coming together on that word with a specific vowel, like the end of Sound the Trumpet with the word day. It's a big diphthong, day, making sure that you're having that diphthong come off at the same time. So the second thing that helps with the blend of the voices, of course, is volume of each voice, and making sure that you're as equal as possible, unless one voice is supposed to be more dominant. You can record yourselves to hear that and practice it. You might take a phrase that has a dynamic marking, like a crescendo in it, out of your music, and practice it separately, making sure that you both have enough breath energy to sing through, creating that volume without putting any tension into your voice. It's just really important to listen to your partner and make sure that you are united and that one voice isn't overpowering the other. So next, in terms of performing duet, there can be lots of variety in how you choose to interpret and communicate its message. Do you add movement, gestures? Do you interact with each other? Where do you look? What is your facial expression? It all depends very much on the duet, but even in non-dramatic duets, like Sound the Trumpet or Will There Ever Be a Morning or Shenandoah, you're invited, both singers are given the opportunity to interact. And it should be clear to the audience that you are both really thinking about the mood and the message that you're trying to convey, and any emotional development that is in the lyrics. And again, most of you are well on your way to doing this very, very well, and with lots of honest interpretation of the mood and the message of the songs. So some of the duets in the classes were from either operetta or opera, and therefore some staging and some characterization is expected. And I was delighted that in the Bolero duet, the two singers created a very unique interpretation that wasn't actually what we would see in the operetta, but it worked beautifully and was credible, and it reflected the lyrics of the song really well. Here you used gestures and movements, and they were very synchronized. Costumes and props were used, and you had choreography that was done with ease and precision. Similarly, in the Hansel and Gretel duet, the first duet of Act 1, where Gretel is teaching Hansel how to dance, you made some different choices than what we're used to in terms of some of the movements and gestures, but they were well chosen and acceptable. And in this case, I was interested to see that maybe it was the difference in height, but it seemed like Hansel was the younger of the two, and that often isn't the way it is. It's usually Hansel is the older one. But it was great because it made it seem that he was learning this dance from the older sister, and that was kind of fun. So again, characterization doesn't need to follow exactly what the expectations are from other performances, as long as you make it completely your own. And the use of costumes and all of the gestures and so on and the body language is really important. It's also important in those kinds of duets to make sure that the introduction, the interludes, and the playouts, that you plan those very carefully, either with simply a subtext, which is basically a silent thought that you continue to have in your mind while the introduction is starting, or during the interludes. For example, when Gretel is teaching Hansel how to dance, Hansel's subtext when he's not singing might be, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? So that you could stay in character completely through those moments when you're not singing. If you want to practice the movements independently, or perhaps by just speaking the lyrics as you're doing them, that's a good way to find a way to coordinate them. But again, my congratulations to the two duets which use the movements and choreography and staging and so on. They were so well prepared and so well done. Just a word of caution though, when you are staging, sometimes it's tempting to have one person upstage and one person downstage, but be careful that doesn't make the person who is downstage have to turn away and up to interact, because that of course cuts off their voice and also their facial expression from the audience. And you might think that works when someone has the lead and someone has the backup, but have to make sure that you plan it so that person that they're equally able to be seen. So as I mentioned, even if your duet doesn't require staging, some movement or physical freedom is valuable, and I would say essential. It's an essential aspect of performing. Your body is your instrument, and if you are too stiff or still, it inhibits your breathing, and it also can make it difficult to release the breath, and your voice isn't as free. So make sure you keep tension out of the upper body and keep your knees relaxed, and don't be afraid to let the music flow through your body. And again, I'm just making this as an observation that many of you did this, but so that's commendable. Other thing to consider is what to wear. If you're not in costume, do you coordinate what it is you're wearing? And I would say that, again, most of the performers chose to do that. So it isn't essential, but it does help to create a sense of unity and decorum. And people hear with their eyes. So with classical duets that are simply you stand and sing them, as with choirs, it helps to focus our attention on the music if you are dressed in a similar way. So I thought I might continue by sharing some suggestions about repertoire from my personal library. I know some of you are already aware of duet anthologies, and there are so many amazing duets for advanced and adult classes, from oratorios, Handel, and from operas. Mozart's operas are full of wonderful duets, operetta, and also duets by classical composers like Schubert and Schumann and Brahms and so on. Lots of stuff to explore and research. But I just wanted to bring forward a few suggestions. So, first of all, easy classical duets compiled by Joan Frey Boyton. Folk songs for two by J. Althouse, edited by J. Althouse. Now, in this one, there are some wonderful arrangements of really familiar songs that some of you may have sung in your younger years, like Skyboat Song, Amazing Grace, and Shenandoah. There are some really lovely duet arrangements of popular folk songs. Classics for two, this time compiled by Patrick Liebergen and by Alfred Publication. Good things in this one as well. Sacred vocal duets. I just put this in there because I think these sometimes get overlooked, but there's some lovely arrangements of not just hymns, but other anthems and so on. Very nice arrangements. And this is a Hope publication and compiled by Lloyd Larson. Last but not least, an older anthology from Boosey and Hawkes. And this is one that contains, well, the Sound the Trumpet, obviously, and another favorite of mine, Spring Wind. It's a lovely duet for young voices. And of course, there are many, many two-part arrangements of choral arrangements that can be adapted to solo voices, making sure that the range suits, because sometimes the choral voices are not always easy to execute. So I'd like to finish. Oh yes, the most important thing, I forgot. I would like to introduce you to the Opera Babes, two women who, their names are Karen England, she's a mezzo-soprano, and Rebecca Knight, soprano, and they have recordings all over YouTube, but also they have obviously CDs, and they take, sometimes they take solos from operas and they've arranged them as duets, or they might take something that is, you know, just a general song and create a duet version. And this is what is called crossover music. So they have very operatic, well-trained classical voices, but sometimes they use those to sing more popular arrangements of things. And so I just wanted to mention before we do anything else with that when you are performing not just duets but solos as well, make sure that you greet and you leave your audience with a smile. It's important to make your audience feel that you are happy about performing. And again, in these categories, in these classes, you were all doing that. My very first teacher's advice when I was about 9 or 10 years old and just starting out in festivals was, well, when you go on stage, Barbara, you just look at the audience and you say, here I am, you lucky people. And I offer that as a subtext for all of you to use if you wish, because you are also gifted and talented, and your performances are also excellent. You should be able to say that with complete honesty. Thank you to your teachers, your parents, your accompanists, and your directors for all of their support and their help. I hope you all continue to make beautiful music together, and thank you again for sharing your talents in this festival.